I'll get hold of Mark. He can deal with it.
We were just trying to slap wrists there, Judith.
I know. I'm trying to be organized.
I missed the memo on that one. Sorry, Andrew.
That's okay. It wasn't
Just
you.
go back and search for Andrew, and I think I think it came from Allison. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it came from Allison.
Yeah. Okay, Allison, are we ready? Or just about? Or
just about.
Boy, the font's a little on this baby.
Ready when you are.
Okay. Good morning, everyone. I'm going to call the Planning and Development Committee meeting to order. Is there any disclosure of pecuniary interest? Member Taylor.
Yes, I have agenda item G3, as I am in the process of owning a lot on the adjacent plan of subdivision.
Thank you very much. Anyone else? Okay. We will go into public meetings. Welcome and good morning. Today, there is one public meeting regarding a proposed development application in accordance with the Planning Act. I am pleased to advise that this is being broadcast live on the Township's YouTube channel, where a recording of this meeting will be available. Notice of the meeting was sent by first-class mail to all property owners within 120 meters, 400 feet of the subject property. Signage was also posted on the subject property to provide information about the application. All of this was in conformance with the Planning Act process for a statutory public meeting. The purpose of the meeting is to inform and provide the public and the Planning and Development Committee with an opportunity to ask questions or express views with respect to the proposal. The format of the public meeting will be as follows. The applicant's agent will generally explain the purpose and effect of the application. Second, the township staff can provide further information and clarify any statements of the applicant and or their agent. Next, the public will be permitted to ask questions and express views on the proposal, and then the public portion of the meeting will be closed. And lastly, the members of the committee will be given the opportunity to ask questions for clarification on the proposal and provide comments. At the conclusion of the meeting for the application, the applicant, their agent, and if required, township staff will be given the opportunity to respond once more to the questions and comments received. No decision will be made today following the public meeting on the proposed zoning bylaw amendment application. Following this meeting, the information obtained, including from questions and comments submitted by members of the public and committee, will assist the township and the applicant's team to determine next steps. Should substantial questions or concerns remain unanswered, an additional public meeting may be scheduled, or a report may return to this committee if additional information is required. Once the township is satisfied with the information provided by the applicants and their consultants, this committee may recommend the bylaw to be considered by council, as the township is the approval authority for the proposed zoning bylaw amendment. If in the future, township council decides in favor of the application by adopting recommendations from this committee, the members of the public who have provided oral or written submissions but disagree with the decision may be entitled to appeal the decision to the Ontario Land Tribunal, OLT, under the Planning Act. Individuals attending the public meeting by YouTube, Zoom, or telephone may email or call the township's planning department to submit contact information to receive notice of the decision on the application. I now call on the applicant's agent, Lauren Arsenault and Victoria Lemieux from Morgan Planning and Development, to please present the information provided within item C 1.31 of the agenda package and explain the purpose and effect of their application. Good morning, Victoria.
Good morning. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Good. Good morning, members of the committee and staff. Allison, I believe I'm sharing do I share my screen on my end, or will you?
Yes.
Okay, great. Okay. One moment, please. Hopefully everyone can see this screen now. So thank you very much for having me this morning, committee. And for anyone who might be watching, my name is Victoria Lemieux. I'm a senior planner with Morgan Planning and Development. This morning, I'm here on behalf of the owners of 2920 Wainman Line. So the subject property, as many members of the committee are probably familiar, fronts onto the west side of Wainman Line, which is approximately 2.5 kilometers from Warminster. The property has a total lot area of about 1 hectare and has about 37 meters of frontage onto Wainman Line. The property, as you'll see in the following slides, is quite long and narrow, having a depth of approximately 265 meters, and is currently developed with a residential dwelling, as well as a small accessory shed in the rear of the dwelling. So here we have the aerial image of the property. Again, as you can see, quite long and narrow. The dwelling itself is approximately 700 feet from, 700 feet or 217 meters from Wainman Line itself. So I know myself, the first couple times I drove by this property, I had to turn around because I missed the house. And additionally, as you can see, of course, the surrounding properties are primarily agricultural in nature, with both agricultural structures as well as rural residential structures located in the area. So the purpose of the application in front of you this morning is to rezone the subject property from the agricultural zone to a site-specific rural residential zone. So what this will do is it'll essentially permit the owner who owns a concrete company that services the surrounding agricultural and commercial industries in the township and also in the county further out to store their commercial heavy equipment and vehicles on the property, and of course outside of the elements, get it outside the elements, theft, all of those things, and overall benefit the neighboring property owners by being able to park these structures internally to an accessory building. And of course, overall, the application will rezone the subject lands to a more appropriate base zone, being that rural residential zone, since there is no active agricultural operations that do occur. So here we have the zone matrix that was submitted as part of this application. In orange, you'll see the items that we are seeking site-specific relief from within the rural residential zone. The first one being a side yard setback of 2.5 meters. This is only recognizing an existing setback to the existing dwelling that's there. So if the owners were to rebuild this dwelling in the future, and the staff report did clarify this, they would have to meet the 4.5 meter requirement. We're just recognizing that existing setback through this application. Secondly, again, extending that accessory use permissions to also include not just personal storage, but also the parking of commercial heavy equipment and vehicles that are owned and operated by the property owner. Thirdly, the property in the rural residential zones and overall throughout the township, properties that have this zoning are permitted up to 3 accessory structures that have a maximum floor area of 110 square meters or 75% of the dwelling's gross floor area separately. So essentially 110 square meters in this case would be permissible on the property as of right in this zone in 3 separate structures. However, this application in front of you is seeking to essentially consolidate that permission into permitting 1 structure with 335 square meters. Additionally, the structure is seeking a height of 7.5 meters. And on the right side of your screen, you'll then see, again, speaking of that consolidation piece of this application, we are restricting the property to not allow for any additional accessory structures once this building is built. Again, this is an effort in working with staff to ensure that no overdevelopment of the property occurs post this application. And lastly, an additional provision requiring soft landscaping along the north and east of the building has been included to allow for, in the future, larger native trees and shrubs once they grow out to further encourage the rural landscape nature of the area. So here we have a site plan that was completed as part of this application. You can see here the proposed structure is this yellow structure in the center of the property. Again, it's important to reiterate that this structure, where it's situated, would be approximately 300 feet from the road frontage. So again, quite a great distance from the property, but regardless, still encouraging that soft landscaping to occur in front of the building and also along the north side for the protection visually of the neighboring property owners to the north. Anyone that's familiar with the site will know that there's already a good number of trees located on the south property line. Actually, I'm going to go back and reiterate as well. And I apologize that it's probably hard to see on the screen here, but I do believe, Council, in your agenda package, there's probably a clearer version of our site plan. But for both staff's purposes and Council's purposes, we wanted to superimpose here the actual size of these trucks that the owner has for his business, one being a boom truck and one being a slinger truck. These trucks are about 40 feet in length. And they're quite high. So again, wanted to really reiterate that this building has been designed specifically to house these vehicles, pardon me. And again, just wanted to show what visually that will accommodate, including some, of course, personal storage, including a small boat that the owner also uses for personal use with his family. So here we have elevation drawings that were completed. Again, wanted to really reiterate to staff and as well, of course, as council, that the structure has been designed in a way to, at its best, fit in with that rural and agricultural character of the area. And we do believe that that has been achieved through this design, as you can see. And so from the provincial and county's perspective, the property is designated agricultural and has a 0 class soil. So it's not part of the class 1-3 soil category. At the township level, the property again is designated agricultural and zoned agricultural. So in regards to applicable provincial policy, as part of our submission, we reviewed both the provincial policy statement as well as the growth plan. And both these documents reiterate that any development outside of settlement areas should only be permitted where, number one, it's compatible with the rural landscape and surrounding uses. Number two, sustained by rural service levels, and of course would not adversely affect the surrounding agricultural operations or other resource-based operations as well. So to reiterate for council and the public, of course, it is our opinion that the application, as you can see through the site plan and the elevation sketches, is compatible with the surrounding rural area. The building itself does not propose any bathrooms or plumbing of any kind. So the existing service level on the property is sufficient. And of course, again, reiterating that the subject property is not currently used for any agricultural purposes. And we do not believe that the construction of this building will have any adverse effect on the surrounding agricultural operations. The County of Simcoe is supportive of this type of development within the agricultural designation, as of course, reiterating that the property is a residential property within the prime agricultural area, and of course is too small to accommodate any substantial agricultural uses. The property is not located, again, within that class 1-3 soil condition, and the residential use has already been established. The Township of Severn's official plan as well was closely reviewed as part of this application and in working with township staff to ensure conformity. And it is our opinion that the application in front of you this morning does conform to the agricultural designation. So in summary, the proposed accessory building will seek to accommodate, consolidate otherwise permissible accessory floor area for 3 structures into 1 structure. This will allow the owner to accommodate personal storage as well as parking of commercial heavy equipment that they own. The enclosed application seeks to restrict any further accessory structures to be built, ensuring no overdevelopment of the property occurs in the future, which of course will protect the existing agricultural and rural character of the area. The proposed building is of similar built form, size, and scale to the surrounding agricultural buildings in the area, and we feel that it has been designed to reflect that agricultural building style to conform with that character. The building is located a significant distance from the road and any surrounding buildings on adjacent properties. Additionally, again, vegetation will be planted along the north and east sides of the building to increase further buffering. The proposed building will not result in the operation of any business on site, only the parking and storage of 2 to 3 vehicles and heavy equipment within the building for the evenings and weekends purposes. Minimal traffic will occur on Wainman line as it currently operates, with 1 or 2 employees visiting the site weekday mornings, early weekday mornings and evenings to pick up and drop off the large trucks that are stored on site. So again, to reiterate for council, there's no actual operations happening on site. The proposed building essentially is going to allow the property owners to store these trucks and to stay in the community and continue to run his small business, which employs local residents and stay within the township to support the local agricultural and commercial industries. So that's all for my presentation. If you have any specific questions, happy to answer that. And thank you again for your time this morning.
Thank you very much, Victoria. Does the township's planner, Brad Oster, have anything further to add to the materials and information presented by the applicant? Morning, Brad.
Good morning, Chair Cox, and good morning, committee. Thank you. I will make this brief as Ms. Lemieux has done a great job to summarize the purpose and effect of the application before you this morning. However, I did just want to offer a couple comments surrounding the use of the proposed building. As the committee is aware, this application does seek site-specific provisions to facilitate the construction of a detached garage with an increased building size and height from what the bylaw currently would permit as of right. Further, this application does also seek to allow for the parking of commercial vehicles, which are owned by the property owner. This application does differ from a home industry rezoning, which the committee may be a bit more familiar with. Since this does not propose the processing of any county-produced agricultural crops or other products, it would not meet the definition of a home industry. Further, there would be no fabrication or manufacturing of goods or products on site. Again, just furthering the fact that this is not a home industry. Further to this, I just also want to clarify for the committee that there would be no on-site storage of construction materials, no showroom, no retail establishment, or other more traditional business related aspects that would be permitted through this application. Strictly only the parking of those commercial vehicles within the proposed building is what is being considered through this proposal. As explained in the report, and as Ms. Lemieux spoke to as well, the size and the height of this proposed building are not uncommon in this agricultural and rural area of the township. Therefore, it's not anticipated to offend the character or the identity of this area of the township. Further, the applicant has conceded to further restrict any future development potential of the lands with respect to accessory buildings by consolidating that built form of what normally would permit 3 accessory buildings into the one that is proposed through this application, as well as recognizing that existing shed in the rear yard. In addition, the applicant has also included in their application a requirement for landscaping along the north and east sides of the building. Normally, this is not a requirement for accessory buildings. However, the applicant has done this to assist with some buffering between the proposed uses. So just in summary, staff are generally supportive of the application, subject to the comments received as part of today's meeting. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Brad. Any persons present on Zoom or telephone who have either questions or comments on the application will now be invited to speak. Please unmute yourself when recognized and turn on your camera if you wish. You will be required to give your full name and address for the minutes. Please note that your comments will also be recorded and live streamed to the township's YouTube channel and will remain online. The township does not have the ability to edit the live stream to remove any personal information provided in the course submitting comments or questions. If there are any members of the public who would like to speak, please unmute yourself now and give your name and address. There hadn't been any as of June 19th. Are there any, Madam Clerk? No? Okay, thank you. All right, so there's no more additional comments. Does the applicant's agent wish to provide any further? No, okay.
No, just available for any questions.
Okay, thank you very much, Victoria. Do the members of the committee have any comments or clarification? Member Taylor.
I have a question through the chair. Will there be fuel storage on site?
Through the chair to Member Taylor, no, it's not understood that other than some small, for instance, for their personal boat and all that, small jerry cans of what a traditional residential garage would have. There's going to be no larger scale fuel storage for the commercial vehicles itself.
Thank you.
Anyone else have any questions or comments? Member McIntyre.
Through the chair, just to be clear, Victoria, did you say there would be no need for a septic or no water, no toilet or any of that nature on the property?
Through you, Chair, to Member McIntyre, that is correct. So for the specific structure we're speaking of today, there's no proposed bathrooms or fixtures or sinks or anything. So the garage won't need to be connected to the existing septic or well.
Thank you.
Any other comments? Member Minnings.
Hi, thank you. Through the chair, from the presentation, the rural residential use for the property, and in your presentation, you said there'll be minimal traffic. So as I was listening, having the heavy vehicles return to the garage, so to speak, because to me it appears that it's a garage structure to house heavy equipment and machinery, that would happen every evening and morning, and then again on the weekends for storage. So my question is around, there will be an increase of traffic on Wainman line for the operation of that. And is there any conflict with the residential use of that and operating? Is it the correct zoning? And again, this is just a question because I'm unfamiliar. It appears that the question will be used now for commercial use to run a business. And even though there won't be a showroom, etc., that it's clearly going to be the main site to operate a business, and whether or not that presents any conflicts.
So through you, Chair, to Member Minnings, I can start, and then I think the township planner can clarify. So when it comes to my comments around the increase in traffic, what I was referring to is essentially the owner currently parks these structures in their driveway, essentially. And even I know the adjacent property owners were asking when he was going to build a building to get them out of the way so they didn't have to stare at these big trucks. So when I meant no increase in traffic, I meant that they're already coming and dropping off those trucks to the property. So increase from today, there would be none. When it comes to the appropriate zoning, and I'll push that to township staff to answer.
Go ahead, Brad.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to clarify for Member Minnings and the rest of the committee as well that the Public Works Department was circulated this application, who would be reviewing the technical matters when it comes time for the building permit application. Should this be approved, they would be reviewing those technical matters such as the entrance to the property and making sure that the entrance and everything like that was appropriate for these vehicles to be entering to and from the property onto Wainman line.
So in supplementary, if that would be reviewed in the future, whether or not it was appropriate for the vehicles to be entering or exiting the property from Wainman line, as you just said, then that sort of that doesn't mesh for me with what was just previously said about it already happening. That they're already entering and exiting because they're being stored in the driveway.
Brad?
Yeah, so I could clarify that. The use of the current zoning of the property and the zoning of these lands wouldn't prohibit the parking of limited commercial vehicles on site. It's not uncommon for property owners to drive a commercial vehicle home at the end of the day, and then they head out to site in the morning. This entrance onto Wainman Line, the property is fairly flat in this area. There's not, I would maybe look to see if the Public Works Department was online this morning. But I don't really anticipate that there would be a lot of concerns with the entrance there. The land is pretty flat, so it's there would be opportunity for an appropriate entrance if upgrades were required. But I mean, it is in an agricultural sort of area where larger vehicles do enter to and from the road. So it's not anticipated that there would be any concerns when Public Works reviews the application in the future.
Thank you. And just one final question. In the diagram shown with the two vehicles parked inside the new structure, the proposed structure, it accommodates only two of the large vehicles. Was that schematic accurate, and it's not going to be meant as a larger garage for additional equipment and vehicles?
Through you, Chair, to member Minnings, exactly. So we took the outline of those buildings and scaled it in AutoCAD to make sure that it showed. It will still provide some area for some tools, again, some general storage for the owners personally, but the large trucks, it'll only be those two large trucks inside.
Okay, any other questions? Okay, seeing none. If there are no further comments, I declare that the public meeting on this proposal, excuse me, sorry, Brad.
Sorry, I did just want to let the committee know that we did also receive correspondence from Enbridge.
Oh, I'm sorry, okay.
Enbridge had no objections to the application, but they did reserve the right to amend conditions in the future.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
If so, I declare that the public meeting on this proposal is closed. Madam Clerk?
Okay, the motion reads that the planning report P23-021 dated June 21st, 2023 with respect to zoning bylaw amendment application, file number Z2302 for the subject lands located at 2920 Wainman Line be received, and further that a draft zoning bylaw amendment be presented to council for consideration at the next available meeting, subject to comments received prior to council's consideration of the zoning bylaw amendment, including additional submissions from council, the Planning and Development Committee, members of the public, circulated agencies, and township departments.
May I have a mover and a seconder, please? Moved by member Taylor, seconded by member Jansen. All in favor? Oops, carried. Thank you very much, everyone. Thank you, Victoria. Thank you, Brad. Okay, moving on to section D. We have no delegations. E, consent agenda. Does anyone want to pull anything to speak to, or are we okay? Okay, Madam Clerk.
Dave, motion reads that the agenda be adopted, including consent items as circulated.
May I have a mover and a seconder, please? Moved by member Jansen, seconded by member McIntyre. All in favor? Carried. Reports from officials. Oh, we did the approval of the agenda, right? Okay. Reports from officials for direction. G1, Rob McCann, Clear Cable, and Eric Rothschild and Company, Severn Broadband, findings and analysis. Good morning, Rob. How are you?
Thank you, Chair. Good morning. And good morning, Mr. Mayor and committee members. We appreciate the opportunity to come present to you today. I am Rob McCann. I'm joined by my colleague, Eric Rothschild. Together, we authored the report that you have before you, the broadband analysis findings. I'll turn it to Eric to give you the summary.
Thank you. Morning, Eric.
Morning. Good morning. Pleasure to be here. And it's a pleasure to explain this report, this analysis, our report, and to tell you that we have answered the questions that were raised when we initially spoke to council. And the good news is that there is funding that has been awarded to the major providers who serve the township already, Bell, Cogeco, and Rogers. And in addition to the projects they've worked on, we see Eastlink is also completing a project near Fesserton. And what we know is that that the province and Ottawa see the national broadband map shows 2,653 households in the township as underserved, meaning they don't get 50/10 megabit per second service now. And what we see is with these projects that have already been approved, already been funded, that all of those households theoretically should have service by the end of 2025. I say theoretically because there's always a few gaps, a house here, a house there, and we've worked and we will take you through showing we've identified where some of those places might be. And you've already got in place many of the policies and procedures required to expedite working with the providers. So we're pleased to say that you're in very good shape, though there are some challenges still. Rob?
Yep. So we found some gaps, obviously, and I'm going to take you through the maps to see those gaps, particularly in Riverdale Estates in the northeast, the northwest around Janes Lane and the Fesserton Side Road. And the township is going to need to work with the providers to close those gaps. But overall, the pace of construction in 2024 and 25 is really going to require additional resources. The next two slides we're not going to deal with. We included them for completeness so you can understand the methodology that we used, collecting data from existing ISPs, following a process to speak with them and get all of their mapping data. We did actually get data as well from Simcoe County, from Public Works, from the CRTC and the province of Ontario, and we've identified the service providers that are there. What you know from the first time we chatted with you is that 37.5% of Severn households were underserved. And this map that you see here is the same map that we showed you at the last trip out, except for we changed the underserved roads to yellow, and you'll see why in a minute. So all of these roads here in the township do not have access to 5010. The black dots that you see is the building footprint data. And where you see the dense collections of buildings, those are already served today, or deemed already served, with the exceptions of the ones that we validated may not be. You will also see the pink kind of purple colors. Those are the new developments that are coming online inside the township. And they're important because we want to make sure that they get served. Overall, 408 kilometers of roads, 2,653 households that do not have service today. Eric?
As I mentioned earlier, Cogeco, Bell, and Rogers have all received significant funding from Ottawa and Queen's Park, and plan to have fiber to the majority of houses by the end of 2025. And Rogers has told us they expect to deliver fiber to 2,200 households. Cogeco's funding was to provide fiber to 470 households. So between those two projects, theoretically, more than the 2,653 households that are currently underserved should be served. And in addition to that, Bell has received funding to install over 71 kilometers of fiber in the township. So that is the very good news. But this is going to put a tremendous strain on Public Works, because for each project they are going to be coming for municipal consents, for road occupancy permits. Public Works is going to have to deal with an awful lot of permit applications, and the province is managing these projects through the accelerated high-speed internet program, and they have put deadlines, very, very short deadlines for the township to respond to these applications. So the Public Works and whoever is working on these approvals are going to be extremely busy over the next couple of years. In spite of the fact that Bell, Rogers, and Cogeco are doing these builds, Rob will be showing you some additional maps that say we anticipate there will still be small areas where they aren't reaching, or they're not currently planning to reach, and that's where you will want to work with their providers to to encourage them to fill any gaps that you have identified or that we've identified in this analysis. We're not anticipating, it was brought up at the last meeting, well, we can't afford to be building these systems. As I've said, the providers have already gotten the funding they need to build out across the township. For these small gaps that might remain, we think if you, instead of cash, if you could provide them for access to your facilities, municipal yards, municipal towers, that is the type of encouragement we think will encourage them to fill any remaining gaps as opposed to cash. Rob?
Speaking of the gaps, so I come back to this map. We covered the folks who are underserviced in yellow, and now this overlays the Rogers project in red, the Bell project in blue, and the Cogeco project in green. And what you'll see from here is that the roads that remain yellow, many of them have very few or no houses or buildings along them, like the one on the very far right-hand side of your screen around Severn Bridge. But some of them do actually have homes associated with them. So we wanted to take some looks at those particular ones. These next maps show you those gaps. First one here in Severn Bridge, we see the construction of Bell in blue. We see the Cogeco stuff in green. You'll notice some of these yellow spots in the middle where there are no households, so we're not overly concerned. But there is this whole section over in Riverdale Estates where both Cogeco and Bell are immediately nearby, but there is no planned services in Riverdale. So we need to be able to get that and communicate that to both Bell and Cogeco. Luckily, the providers have certainly said they're interested in building a new development. So as long as they know about them, we will get them picked up. If you're curious about some of these red dots down here between the yellow, those are just minor artifacts in the data. The reality is that if we have red on each side, that's going to get picked up by the Rogers project. Again, important for township staff to be involved as they apply for their applications to make sure that those sections that are underserved get picked up. The next gap that we have is up in the north. And as you see here, Bell is building a significant part along the border, but there are individual gaps along the way that miss some houses. And there's also this very curious Rogers build right in the middle of Bell territory. This is highly unusual. It's not likely that Bell would build all the way through this Bell territory, or that Rogers would build through this Bell territory to get to that small collection of homes. So this is something that needs to be managed with the providers. Again, we see that this gap exists. It's probably an artifact in the data, but certainly Bell has expressed an interest in reviewing these things with the township to make sure that they pick up those little spots. It's not practical for them to just not build one section in the middle. So that's an area that we need to pay some attention to. Also, there are a couple of areas that are particularly challenging. We see the islands here on your left-hand side of your screen and down in the middle. We're not quite sure how those are going to get serviced today. It's more than likely a fixed wireless solution, but also down here by Otter Lake. Even though Rogers intends to come by that road and deliver perhaps to the smaller collection of buildings where they drop off, there are some down further that are likely to be impractical for them to reach as a whole. So these may be collectively a candidate for some kind of fixed wireless solution that may be available from Bell or Rogers, or may require the engagement of another smaller ISP of some sort. Certainly, again, these areas to be raised with the service providers as the build starts to continue. There's one last area over here. This is Georgian Heights and Fesserton Development, two of them side by each, one in yellow, one in purple. This is an Eastlink area building out of Coldwater up. And we're told by Eastlink that they will be ready for any occupancy that happens in those areas. The builds are really just finishing up. And we just want to make sure that that actually is the fact when the residents take ownership of the homes. So that's the other sort of major gap that we've seen in the data. Eric.
So what we have recommended is that you are in a place where you have your municipal consents guidelines that was recently approved. Excellent document, and we think that you want to be sure to publicize it, communicate it, put it on the website. You may want a button on your website for broadband, and in there, let people know let providers know what your tower policy is. You've got municipal access agreement that you negotiated with Cogeco, an excellent model to work with others. You want to make it simple for the providers to see what's the process for towers, what's the process for my municipal access agreement, for my municipal consents, and you've got those pieces already in hand. It's just we recommend you make it easier for providers to learn about it, and we think your website is the perfect spot. We talked about the gaps that Rob has identified, and we think that offering access to municipal facilities, your buildings, your towers, your yards, those are the type of incentives that will go a long way with these providers. In some ways, right now it's more important in cash because places to install equipment is at a premium throughout the township. As I talked about the number of permits and approvals, the applications that are going to be coming in, we think there's an opportunity for you to consider introducing, and the providers certainly talk to us about this, that it would help if you had an express process or omnibus approval. So instead of having to have, for instance, 6 or 8 individual approvals for road occupancy permit or municipal consent, perhaps you can have an omnibus that deals with this is the area being built, and so unless there are significant changes, this permit, this approval will cover it all, as opposed to having individual applications, individual approvals for every section of roadway, every little piece. We also recommend that you appoint someone to be in charge of this, the person that the providers know to contact. This is and the person who will deal with the province with the accelerated high-speed internet program, because as I mentioned before, there are very short timelines to respond to these projects, and the providers need someone to be able to pick up the phone or send an email and get an answer to. So we think that it would really expedite the process and help to clarify and simplify the process if you put a person in. And we estimate it's about half of a full-time equivalent position. And the final recommendation, we know that you meet with Simcoe County representatives once a year. We actually think it would be useful in this regard for at least through end of 2025 to be having at least 2 meetings with them each year, one in the fall, one in the spring. The one, and I say spring, I actually mean late winter, but while there's still frost in the ground, you should be talking to find out what's coming up in the construction season ahead, and in the fall to say, okay, so what got done and what didn't get done, and what's our objective for going ahead? Because you are all working together. You're not working in isolation. You all join each other, whether it's the county and you also want to be talking to the district of Muskoka. They're right next door. But at the end of the day, what we can say is that we see this as a very good news story for the township, in the sense that the projects have been approved, the funding has been approved, you know who the key providers are, and you have a timeline. And with that, I hand it back to you, Rob.
Thank you again, Mayor and Council. What's really important, as Eric pointed out, is that there is a really good news story, but there is tremendous amount of work to be done. It's going to be very busy with construction, and doing anything to make that process more simple, as documented in our report, is going to help that process move quicker. Chair, I turn it back to you.
Thank you very much. It is a good news story. Thank you very much. It's always nice to have those on our agenda. I guess what I'll do is I will open it up to the committee for questions and comments. Member Taylor.
You have a couple of questions here. You highlighted Georgian Heights there, and you focused on a new development that hasn't been approved yet. I'm questioning, what about the current homes on Georgian Heights? They're screaming for high-speed internet. Is Eastlink going there as well as the new development? That's question number one.
Okay.
Yes. Oh, sorry, through you,
No,
Chair.
go ahead.
Yeah. Yes. We have confirmation from Eastlink that they do intend to fill that and provide those services. Again, this is another one to follow up with whoever takes the responsibility of being the broadband coordinator. To the town staff, we have provided the contacts of the individuals responsible at each of the service providers.
Okay, second of three questions. Basically, Upper Big Chute Road from Coldwater back to Severn Falls is serviced by Eastlink, and they have fiber optics there, and it goes by our house, but the speed at our house, at best on a good windy day, was 12 megabytes. So consequently, we went to Starlink, and your map said that that area is going to become Rogers. I'm confused. How can Eastlink bump their speed up on their current fiber optics, or is a new line going in where they are now?
Yeah, so the new line will actually likely go in. Basically, the data that shows what has 5010 is the stuff that the funding decisions are made on. So Rogers has been awarded that space to do that road and to provide fiber services. So we anticipate that that will happen. That doesn't preclude, Eastlink from deciding to up their game and be competitive. So I think you're going to see a good news story in there as the next 2 years progress. And if I could,
as a footnote there, Janes Lane runs off of Upper Big Chute Road. So Rogers is going to come in and either compete or work with Eastlink to get better internet.
That's right. Yep.
And my last question, Port Severn on the Georgian Bay side has high-speed internet. Why couldn't we work with the current supplier there to work on the other side on our side?
Certainly you could work with a service provider. I don't think we looked on the Georgian Bay side of who's covering that today. But the reality is that these sections have been awarded to the service providers already. And they're the ones who are going to be funded to build it. I think would be challenged to get a provider who's not already awarded funding to compete in that section.
Thank you.
And my last comment, I said at an earlier meeting that when we're going through a lot of granite and laying fiber optics, I still think satellite is the way to go. That's just my personal opinion.
Yeah, and through you, Chair, if I can comment on that, we did find, and you'll see it in the report, oddly, Starlink claims that a large portion of the township is not serviceable by them. We can't justify exactly why, other than their concept of rolling thunder, so to speak, that they're not opening up all segments all the time. So it would seem that a portion of township residents who want Starlink will end up going onto a waiting list.
Thank you very much. Member Burkett.
Thank you through the chair, and thank you to Eric and Rob. Great presentation, exciting news. Your maps, I'm excited, but I'm concerned because you first showed the majority of our township in yellow, and then you showed it in red. So I'm curious, like with your discussions with Rogers or Bell or whatever provider is going to provide that service for our township, I presume they're going to be digging and putting in fiber. Is that their intentions to do that?
Yes, it
is.
is. So, Rogers is committed to fiber to all 2,200 households that it's been funded for. Cogeco has said the same. So they're all committed to fiber as much as possible. The question is it in the ground or is it on poles? But that's not what you're asking, Councillor. But and they cannot tell us that right yet. But the plan is fiber wherever they can, and in those two funded projects, 100% fiber. They're saying.
So supplementary through the chair, if I may. So they can't tell you, but they've been on the job and they've got the funding. So that's where I'm a little confused.
Well, they can't tell you. I know that they've gone out and they said that they expect the majority to be aerial, not in the ground.
Okay.
So they know that much, but can they tell you exactly the number of poles and exactly the number of feet or kilometers of drilling? I don't know that they can, Rob.
No, that's fine. That's fine. I didn't understand, if I may stop it, Rob, but I didn't understand that they were going to put some of it on the poles, because I can't see them drilling only because of the project that we have on Canal Road, Cogeco. And I know there was something with, I don't want to say, but it's been 2 years. And I know member McIntyre still doesn't have fiber or high-speed internet in his home. And I'm just curious, do you know the blue line that they actually run underground? Fiber needs to come through that. It's like a black hose, a water hose. Does fiber then put in afterwards? Is that the way it works?
Yes, normally what happens is the construction crews will push the conduit where it needs to go, and sometimes it may sit there for a while, and then another crew comes along and blows the fiber through the conduit and then does all of the splicing and connection.
I got you.
Those maps that we showed actually came from the providers, so they are their plan of record. They may not be at the stage of actual engineering yet. So you should soon see folks invest out on streets doing surveys and looking at how are they going to get things around. You're right. We acknowledge Cogeco had some challenges with access to rights of way, getting underneath the highway, getting space for some of their street furniture, their little cabinets, which is what drove, our comment about perhaps there are some municipal facilities. We totally understand the rights of ways are congested, which is another reason why they may, during that design phase, want to go up onto the poles. All of that, though, would be presented to the township as they submit their request for permits.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions or comments? Member Minnings.
Hi, thank you. I also agree. It's a great presentation and the future's looking good for high-speed internet across Severn. A few times during your presentation, however, you mentioned gaps, and I just need clarification on what that is. So, for example, instead of cash, provide them access to storage yards. And sort of to that, I think it was Mr. Rothschild, you said that there was a municipal access agreement that the township has negotiated with Cogeco. I'm not familiar or aware of that or what that is, so that might be a question for our CAO. But I would like to know what the meaning is behind providing them access to our yards and the existing access agreement that we have with Cogeco. Thank you.
Rob, or Eric, okay.
Well, I'm going to ask Rob to talk about the facilities, because that dovetails into what he was just talking about. For instance, with the challenges Cogeco has had in its build of getting, because rights of ways are crowded and there's limited space. Rob?
So let's deal first with the space issue. As I mentioned, there's going to be a tremendous amount of construction. There's going to be lots of construction crews on the road. We're going to want to minimize the impact to residents. And if you can imagine, you may have seen driving on the highway one time, these big giant reels of fiber, these huge wooden reels, and the big trucks that pull those reels, and the plows that go along the side of the road, or the bucket trucks that need to go up. So because there's going to be such a tight timeline of physical construction, and you're going to have 3 providers active in the township, we really think there's going to be a logistical challenge of where things go and where they're stored. We don't want them bringing trucks in every night and taking them out every night, sort of thing. So it would be incumbent to find safe ways to leave those vehicles in an area. And that drives the notion of, are there some parks, are there some municipal yards, are there some areas where we can safely accommodate that facility? And one step further is that, particularly in those areas where maybe fixed wireless becomes a requirement, those particular gaps, it may be beneficial if there is a yard or there is a municipal building where some permanent equipment could be installed. That could help solve that problem. But again, it's very minor because we only have one tiny section we think might be fixed wireless. Now, dealing with the municipal access agreement, that's a standardized set of agreements that gets signed between a municipality and a service provider that sets out the rules with which they use the public rights of way. Now, in Canada, service providers have the right to use it regardless. They can go install, but we like them to have a municipal access agreement with the township because it will make sure that the work that they do is properly permitted, properly restored. It'll set out what happens if the road needs to be moved or if something needs to be emergency repaired. So it's a very standardized set of rules. Service providers are accustomed to them, but we also at the same time need to make sure they're not super complicated and difficult to administer, that they are somewhat carrier friendly, but still protect the interests of the municipality. And we must say that your Public Works Department did a fantastic job. It is a sound policy or sound agreement, and it is signed with Cogeco and Rogers. So we don't see any problems moving forward.
Thank you for explaining that. Thank you.
Any other questions or comments? Member Burkett.
Thank you, through the chair. So Rob or Eric, so this year you're saying that there'll be engineers running around looking at our area, trying to decide which way is the better way, whether they hook it on a pole or whether they dig into a ground, but nothing will happen this year other than the engineers running around doing what they need to do. And then next year they would start.
That's true for Rogers.
Okay.
Cogeco is 90% complete. They say 90% complete by the end of this month in their project, and they expect it to be 100% complete by September. So they're well underway. But Rogers is still doing engineering. Yes, you should be expecting to see their people or their representatives out in force this summer, because they've told us that they plan to start filing permit applications at the beginning of 2020 at the beginning of next year, 2024.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions or comments? Member McIntyre.
Through the chair to Eric, if Cogeco is 90 to 100% done, for instance, on my road, Canal Road, and the area surrounding there, once they're 100% done, what's your best guess at the timeline that they'd take to have internet installed in those areas?
Oh, they will do it as quickly as they get sections completed, and in fact, most providers, they don't wait till the project is 100% complete. They want to get the revenue from it as quick as they can. So as they complete sections, they will activate it and start marketing.
Okay, so just at a guess, would you think between now and the winter, do you suppose?
Well, I'd be surprised if it isn't between now and Thanksgiving.
Oh, thank you for that. Thank you.
Member Burkett. Yeah, can't hear you.
Sorry, through the chair to either Rob or Eric, how does the funding work? So Rogers and Bell and Cogeco have been given funding. So do they have to, they just aren't given a lump sum of money. Someone has to oversee the project. Is that the way it goes? And they get draws? Is that the way the government deals out the money? Or do you know?
Sorry, Go ahead, Rob.
Yeah, the funding agreements are made between the province and the feds and the service providers, and we don't get visibility into the terms of that agreement.
Okay.
There is a bond, though. We know that for sure. That was in the beginning. So they have to put up a bond, a performance bond, to actually complete it, and they don't get the bond until well after it's done.
And typically there are milestones that they have milestones that they have when they achieve certain milestone, then they report that and it's reviewed, and then they get a portion of the money. So typically it's not that you're getting it all in a lump sum. Typically you're getting it in portions, and that's part of the contract negotiation. And when my company a number of years ago got funding this way, and we got, as I recall, 30% up front, but then they would only release it in pieces as we filed our milestone reports, and then there was a 10% holdback for a year after the completion.
So supplementary through the chair, if I may, and I know that both of you do this many times for different municipalities. So you did say in your presentation that we needed to have someone that was in our municipality that was the go-to person. This person, he or she, if council decides to have someone, I don't think we have a staff member because we're a small organization, but they can lobby on our behalf. Is there any way their lobbying would help bring this quicker, like this year or next year? Have you seen that before, where we're constantly phoning Roger, asking them, we're here to help, where are you? Like, does this help, or should we just let them do what they need to do?
You have to remember that they're working on projects in all sorts of parts of the province. In the case of Rogers, for instance, it got $171 million of funding through ASIP, but there's a long list of communities. And so I guess that's my way of saying, I think you just need to leave them alone and let them work out their plans. Yes, the squeaky wheel gets the grease, but I don't think that the lobbying is going to change the timeline. And you got to be very careful about using that term, because there are actually prohibitions against lobbying in the different funding programs. And so what I'd say is that you want this person, the key thing this person can do is not so much to accelerate the timeline. It's all about the gaps and making sure that the providers are persuaded to make sure there are no gaps. See, there may be gaps today in their plans. I mean, Rob has shown you their maps, and what gaps we've identified were on their maps. You want to work with them and as closely as you can to make sure that you persuade them not to leave any gaps. No one should be left unserved. I would suggest that's as important or more important than trying to accelerate it. They've set their timelines, because it's not just about it's not just about your township, Severn. It's the whole province that they're looking at, and so it's part of a much bigger game plan.
Thank
And
you.
that said, we are super confident that the municipalities who make it more simple to execute faster, to get them to revenue quicker, are going to be the ones that get the most attention up front. And that's why we've proposed the omnibus approvals, because if we can approve a large area of the township using a particular technology, rather than have multiple permits for all of those roads, and if we can have the person who is the interface, who's the one that can help take out roadblocks when there are roadblocks, or find accommodations when the service provider's accommodations are needed, and or identify and communicate those gaps accordingly. Even if we find out that Cogeco went down a street and missed one house, getting the message to them that house was missed would be important. So that having that role is indeed going to invariably make things move quicker. We might not up their construction schedules, but we'll make sure that covers off the areas of the township that need to be covered.
Okay. Thank you.
Member Minnings, you had your card up or no? Okay. Member Taylor.
Yeah, just one last question to the chair. Since the majority of our area out here is county road, so who at the county would be dealing with this? And maybe I look to our county reps on that one to make sure that that's a big bulk of the areas from Coldwater to Severn Falls.
I would think that the engineering staff would look after it, but if the mayor has another comment.
Through the chair, I'm
staff.
happy. Through the chair, I'm happy to ask. We're down there on Tuesday. Happy to ask that question.
Thank you.
Okay, I just had, oh, go ahead.
Actually, through the chair, I wanted to make a wrap-up comment. So if you still have questions,
okay.
Deputy Mayor, go ahead.
I just had a couple of questions. So when you're talking about these projects and the paperwork applications, where you a broadband lead and the express approvals, there was a time, and I could be wrong, but I'm sure I read it, that the province, were they not offering to help municipalities expedite or come up with someone who would help them expedite, show them, or there was something that had come up that I read, or no?
Well, through the accelerated high-speed internet program, the province and Ottawa have pooled their resources. That's a $4 billion fund, and so they've established and are still establishing an infrastructure and staffing to deal with the permit applications and a central number. And they have said that they're happy to try and guide your people and train your people, but your people, they still expecting it to be done at the municipal level. They're prepared to try and train and guide.
Okay.
But that's as far as
that's
they've
what
said.
I thought.
I thought,
but there is something there that could help us train and guide.
Yes.
To help expedite, and that we're all on the same page in all the same areas. Okay, that's good to know. And I just wanted to also ask, you were talking about Riverdale, and you said we will ensure that Cogeco or Bell, and you said that a couple times. Does that mean Clear Cable does it, or is that something the township will have to do?
That's something that would befall the township staff.
Okay, yep. I just want to check that. And then when everybody was talking about Rogers and Bell, Eastlink's got a schedule, and they will be on their schedule too.
Yes, but Eastlink has done this of their own volition. Right. I don't believe they received any government funding for it.
Okay.
Rob, you spoke with them directly about that.
Yep, that's right. This is their project.
Oh, well, that's good. The other one is just through the CAO. I guess then we'll have to have a report back on this with some ideas about how we are going to handle it, but at least we know that the province does have some help for us, which is very nice to know. And it was interesting that you said about meeting with the county twice, the coordination, because we were at a meeting last week or a week so doing a strategic plan, and the CAO at the county said that was something that the municipalities, all 16 in the county, need to really start to tighten up and work together with utilities because of the issues that are coming forward. And I'm assuming that means when you had a name for it, but all those wires that are all going together now on the side of a road all need to be coordinated.
Yes,
so right. They are looking at that. I know that they talked about that to be a priority. And
I'd volunteer that if you do that and you work together, you'll be even happier with the results from what the providers do for you. Because they will appreciate that you are working in a coordinated fashion. I can tell you that in certain districts that we've worked with, where each municipality is going its own way, and the providers find that very frustrating, very time consuming. And so if you're working together, they're going to like the township even more.
So I guess that's something that the mayor and I could take back to county council, that if they already don't know that, but they did speak to it. So now I'm understanding why. I thought it was just hydro and gas, but obviously it's broadband too. Okay, Madam CEO.
I just wanted to thank Rob and Eric and tell council what a pleasure they've been to work with. They did what they said they would do in the time that they said they would do it, and they kept us up to date as they did it. And we haven't had that experience with too many consultants and contractors over the last couple of years. So I just wanted to let council know that we were very pleased with working with them.
You're very kind. Appreciate it very much.
Listen, it's yes, thank you very much. And on behalf of council and the mayor, I just want to thank you very much. It's been very clear, it's concise, and we all understood it very well, and you've answered our questions.
And if you have follow-up questions, looking at our report, please, do not hesitate to get back in touch with us. I mean, we're happy to answer anything we can.
So if we yell help, we can call you?
You betcha.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Everyone have a great day.
Have a good day. I've lost my agenda. Sorry.
All right, I have a motion for you, Madam Chair.
That's great. Thank you very much.
Okay, so the motion reads that the presentation from Rob McCann of Clear Cable and Eric Rothschild of Rothschild and Company regarding Severn broadband findings and analysis be received, and that staff be directed to continue to communicate with the providers to encourage filing in the small broadband gaps outstanding, and for the staff report back on staffing needs identified in this report.
May I have a mover and a seconder, please? Moved by Member Brennan, second by Member Burkett. All in favor? Carried.
Thank you.
Okay, next on the agenda, sorry, Madam Clerk, could you read it till this comes back?
It's the deeming bylaw application.
The deeming, okay. And Mr. Oster, thank you very much.
Thank you, Chair. This application is pretty straightforward. There's lands located at the intersection of Cleveland Avenue and Highway 11 in the settlement area of West Shore. One of the lots has frontage only on Highway 11. The other lot has frontage on Highway 11 and Cleveland Avenue. The applicant is essentially looking to develop these two lots as one property, but due to them being lots on a plan of subdivision, each are separately conveyable, and the zone requirements such as setbacks and lot coverage would apply to each lot individually. Despite the lands being located within a settlement area where growth and development are generally encouraged, and with the consolidation of the lands, it may appear to limit or further restrict the development potential of the property with respect to densities. But given the access constraints and the challenges with having frontage only on Highway 11, the Ministry of Transportation is relatively restrictive with new entrances, so it's unlikely that the lands would be eligible for development. So therefore, by consolidating them into one property, it is ideal, and it would use the existing entrance for access to the property, which is preferred by the township. So staff are supportive of the deeming bylaw application as presented. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Brad. Any questions or comments from the committee? Seeing none, Madam Clerk.
Certainly, the motion reads that planning report P23-020 dated June 21st, 2023, with respect to a deeming bylaw application for the lands described as part lot 121 and 122, plan 723, known municipally as 3311 Cleveland Avenue, be received, and that the draft deeming bylaw included as attachment 3 to planning report P23-020 be brought forward immediately. And for that, should council pass the deeming bylaw, the clerk be directed to provide a certified copy of the bylaw to the clerk of the county of Simcoe per section 5026 of the Planning Act.
Moving a seconder, please. Moved by Member Taylor, second by Member Jensen. All in favor? Carried. Now to report P23022, lifting of 1 foot reserves, 26, 28, and 30 Shepherd Street.
Thank you. Thank you. That will be me. Good morning.
Good morning.
I'm just going to share my screen briefly here, just to help illustrate the request before you. Chair Cox, can you see my screen at this point?
Yes, I can. Thank you very much.
Excellent. Thank you.
So
the subject lands in question are located on the north side of Shepherd Street. So I'm hoping you can see my mouse circling those 3 currently vacant properties, which have existed since the 1990s. However, due to lack of municipal road frontage and servicing, the 1 foot reserve essentially prevented building permits from being issued. The lands to the east, shown in red, have now been subject to an approval of a subdivision, and the subdivider has now constructed the rest of Shepherd Street in front of the 3 subject homes, as well as included in that is sanitary and water services. The 2 landowners have come to an agreement, privately, and they've advised us as such, as the letters included in your package. So therefore, at this point in time, it would be appropriate for committee to recommend to council that the 1-foot reserve along the frontage of these 3 lots be lifted, such that building permits would be eligible once the final inspections have taken place by the township. Thank you, Madam Chair. That's it for now, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Ms. Woodrow. Anyone have any questions or comments on the committee? Seeing none, we'll have a motion from the clerk. Thank you.
Okay, motion reads that the planning report P23-022 with respect to the 1-foot reserves located along 26, 28, and 30 Shepherd Street, designated as parts 1, 2, and 3 on Plan 51R 25966 be received, and further that the draft bylaw to lift the 1-foot reserve located along the north side of Shepherd Street be prepared for consideration at the June 28th special council meeting.
I need to ask a question. Member Minnings, are you still there? Because her screen. Oh,
yes.
Oh,
yes,
okay. Thank you. Sorry, your screen was black. Sorry, I just wanted
to. It continues to freeze.
Okay, you're okay now? Okay, thank you.
I am.
So I need a mover and a seconder, please. And I've lost her.
No, I'm here.
Okay.
I just the video doesn't work. I'll take it up with the township.
Oh, okay, no problem. Moved by Member Jansen, second by Member McIntyre. All in favor?
Yes.
Member Minnings, thank you. Any new business? Okay. Madam Clerk, we need a motion for adjournment, please.
Certainly, that this meeting being is hereby now adjourned at 10:15 a.m.
Mover and a seconder. Moved by Member Brennan, seconded by Member Burkett. All in favor?
Yes.
Carried. Madam CEO, did you have a comment? Sorry.
I did not. I was just going to say.
Okay, you just came back.
See it in the chamber at 1 p.m.
Okay, we'll see everyone at 1 p.m. and in chamber. Thank you very much. Take care. Bye-bye.